Check, check. 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2. Check, check. Check, 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 check. 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2. Check, check. Check, check. Check. 1, 2. Check. Check, check. Check, check. Check, 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 check.
Say, tell Elizabeth to call me.
Elizabeth, call Eddie. Check, check. 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Elizabeth, call Eddie.
Same school they want. Look like I have room for a ticket.
It's the same setup.
Does she have to make prompts?
No, she's ready.
Oh, yeah. I can move that.
Okay. We don't have to wear that?
Well, they need it for the broadcast.
I mean, we can send it, we can use it anytime.
Don't sound whispering.
That's what I'm talking about. I think we do a lot of undertone calls.
Somebody might catch it.
Well, thanks for the point. Then you heard that, right?
Okay. So we're getting filled up. We're saving seats here. Why don't we get these?
I am, so that.
Can y'all move in? If you've got a seat on a row, if you'll move toward the wall, we're gonna try to get as many people in here as we can.
That's fine. Is that okay? Is there anything else?
You know what? I think I might get one of these seats. No. Let me in.
That's mine.
Oh, that's yours?
Yep, that's mine. So you better take.
When you get your iPad
Yeah,
pulled up, somebody take a look at it.
Go ahead.
Are all your department heads coming?
Not all of them, but.
Can I grab one of these seats? These can clip onto your lapel or wherever. Just try to watch the jewelry so it doesn't cling around on you.
Okay. All right. So that's all we have to do is just keep it on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then you can leave the mic sitting and put it in your pocket, in your lap, wherever on the table, wherever it's out of your lap.
Miss Edwards, I didn't get a chance to speak to you coming in.
I'm
You doing
doing
okay?
fine,
Good to see
fine.
Adam Taylor with Lander.
Okay.
Miss Betty, I was gonna tell you. Because my Lord won't make me drive on speed.
That'd be a good place for me to put.
President, he'll make it happen. The president can't be here. We're sorry. We have a vice president.
Is that a sound speaker?
In Louisiana, she had
Probably that's the best plug right there.
sorry he can't be here, but
That's an interesting.
things happen.
Oh, yes.
Y'all got an agenda?
Oh, my God.
Did y'all get an agenda? Yep, the agenda's in here.
Oh,
I'm
hi.
Lucas McMillan.
I know, I was just there when you,
Yes.
you did the big important.
Do you want the memo or the agenda?
I got the agenda, but
Here's the memo right here.
We've got the agenda in here. For you all.
So I don't need to fire up the computer.
It was something about.
We've got all sorts of later.
See if I can find you a cup of coffee.
I'll get Danny to look at it. He's gonna be here. So there's the
You
memo.
actually got people to show up that not smoking and nothing to do with dogs.
Lots of extra credit. Just throw it in there.
You don't need that.
while I'm over here, would you all like for me to give you all something to drink?
Ken, good afternoon.
Hey, man.
Taylor, good to see
Yeah,
you.
nice to see you.
Hey,
Hey,
how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. How you doing, girls? Russian, as always. Russian, as always.
Your microphone right here. Mic'd up.
I just moved inside me. Oh, that's been broke forever. So the questions aren't on here. No. So that's a waste of time.
So you don't need to press anything on here. Everything's good. Let's see.
I have to go in the food.
Oh, Miss Dilly. Oh, man.
And then just put this wherever out of your way.
Just so y'all know, the mics will be live all the time, so everyone downstairs can hear what you're talking about.
Oops, better watch what you say, Ken. That'll be a first. Yeah, it is.
I wasn't gonna click it until the time.
That's fine, you can do it, just, like I said, make sure it's not running.
Put this on here.
Whatever you want to do, boss.
You have to be at home.
There you go. And just put this out of the way.
It's not trying.
Okay. Or I can just leave it on the table. What's that, dude?
Your health.
Oh, cool. Perfect timing almost.
So if it's jiggling, I need to take it off.
No, you shouldn't, it shouldn't bother, as long as it doesn't. That was gonna be a.
I have no idea. Hello? This is so we got deniable liability now. Hey, Drip, how are you?
Okay.
Hey, how are you?
I know she, her mother failed twice.
I agree. It's been
I didn't think I was gonna make it in time.
You want on this side?
Yeah.
That's why I said I didn't need a big room.
Because I can't. That's why I can do it.
It doesn't matter. I'm planning to do.
That'll be good right there if it's out there.
Today I walked out the morning and
Yeah, if you would tell everybody else, the mics are live all the time.
Okay.
So like in the room downstairs, there'll be a video saying
The mic's alive.
call your family, tell them Google it on YouTube and
Oh,
I saw their baby.
Glad you all are here. Did you graduate in music?
Yes, I did.
That's what I thought you did. I didn't say anything. As soon as I say music, they'll say, no.
That's right, yeah.
Good. I'm Lucas McMillan.
Ronnie Abel.
Nice
Good
to
to meet
see
you.
you. I'm glad y'all were here. We like Matt best because he's like Julie. He's a lander of wonders. So music and political science.
I just sent you on some British people.
Yeah, I do like British people. I spent.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have a
Show
soccer
you
team.
that zone map, and I
We've got a lot of
wrote
good
in
soccer players.
my memo that you probably haven't had a chance to see yet, but
One of
I was
my
gonna just mention,
told me
I
today
can
he got
provide you all with a bigger copy, like you have it in your house, so that when I tell you we're in zone 11, that you know where that is. It might be beneficial to you,
Because the whole country.
especially because we're gonna do this project of code enforcement like this now. So like they just finished up in the zone 13, which is partially in your ward and partially in Spoles. So figured I'd make
This would be good enough.
yeah, well, I'm gonna see if all the council members want one, and I'll bring y'all one today.
Okay. It'll be helpful, when people calling you, that you can look and tell them where they are and how, after they finish this one and they fit and get it your way.
I'll bring it back to you, and we'll take it down.
Oh, you know.
So I mentioned this zone map in my memo. This is what public works uses thief and limb and sanitary collection, and now building inspection is going to start using this for code enforcement. And I know you guys don't have a copy of it. Like we all have copies in our office. So if someone calls, we can say, oh, you're in zone 1 and you're currently in zone 12. We'll probably be in your area in about 2 weeks. It just helps us to be.
So these little pockets around there, don't count.
The whitest county, the color is this. These are probably some more.
It's the weirdest setup going.
But anyway, if it would be beneficial to you guys, I can get all of y'all copies of this and you can just keep it in your office or house or whatever. And we have like an Excel spreadsheet, so we can look up the addresses in Zone 10. Because all the streets obviously.
We've given you a lot of information there about upcoming events.
Okay.
I can email it to you all.
I don't know if you've heard about this, but this has
Probably
got
more favorable.
all sorts of things in it about World War I, including the debate about the memorial. And so that's got a local aspect, not just a regional South aspect.
Okay.
And then we wanted you to know about some of our wonderful students, and there's our most recent alumni.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
We like to brag about them.
Okay. Hey, where did we sit? Where did we put Brandon? Where did Brandon sit? But he had an order. Hey, we had an order when we get emails and texts. Oh, there you are. Thought you weren't gonna be here.
My mother hasn't gotten out of rehab yet.
Oh, I don't keep it in here.
He's gone in for the 3rd week.
Jeff. Does that make you uncomfortable?
CTC funds.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, how are you?
So don't whisper, huh?
Thank you. I do have. Hey, how are you? Good. All right. No, thank you. Okay. Gotcha. Will do. Thank you. I've done these before. I've come over here and done this.
First time over, yeah.
It's good. Good little change of pace.
Yeah.
I'm just good with
Not
that.
right now. Hold on. Not right now. Hold on.
What are you going to do? It's a pretty big one. It's a pretty big mistake.
Your mic was hot.
He did. Yeah.
The mic's live. So I'm not going to face it.
Still in disbelief. If they have water. You have it, but don't. I mean, I have people who drink lukewarm water are very sketchy in my book. Besides, you're the exception to everything. My dad does that, and I said, "What is it?" I said, "Do you need a straw or something? We can get it to your throat more efficiently." And he said, "No, you just don't need it. Might as well not drink water at all if it's not cold." Thank you. Wow. Not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah, but we're a couple months away from that.
Chief Brooks or Blue.
Yeah, for blue. Whatever you want. Yeah, it might be a little early. We'll figure it
I tried to go in there and just kind of blend in.
Yeah, I
It
know.
wasn't for me.
There's some listeners.
Hello, Louie.
There's some that want.
I'm okay.
I
How are
know.
you?
One of them wanted to hear actually.
Do we have
He's not here now.
an ordained minister in the house? see someone else to give the invocation. You know, it's customary for new assistant managers to give you the
And Julie said she's never going to do it, so.
I'll get you to give the invocation. How you doing?
Father who art in Foxborough.
God is great. God is good.
I might have to pull out my iTunes if you want me to be doing that. I don't know if we're on Spotify.
Who's going to say the invocation?
You look like a bear.
I told him it's customary the new city manager usually. Yeah.
So, you do it or?
If there is a minister, I'm going to defer, but if not, I'll it's an emergency.
Oh, I'm full on already. I won't pass, no.
I will. This is the interactive portion.
Laura, I sent you an email. Thank you. I didn't have time to check that email.
You know of anybody that would like to
Okay.
give the invocation?
Okay, thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate it.
Qualified, or I guess you. I'm looking at one. Sure. Fantastic. Hey, Mr. Dominic, how are you? So good. We'll call it to order here and get you just a minute. Yeah. I can read one. You'll come from the heart. Yeah.
No, I remember
All that
8 tracks.
time.
I remember rewinding it and all that sort of thing.
Hey, Beth.
Inside the flipping
Ready?
cassette player.
She's still in rehab.
All right, we're going to call this
We don't
meeting to
know if
order.
it's deep or-
Thank everyone for coming. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, Chapter 4, Title 30, Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, an agenda has been posted on the front door of City Hall, and notification of this meeting has been given to the news media. Going to ask Mr. Dominic for an invocation.
Let us pray. Our dearest and most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to come this evening and see our democracy at work. We thank you so much for the freedoms that you allow us in this great country. We thank you for the blessings that you continually bestow upon us. We ask that you be with each and every one of these students here today in this wonderful university, and our city administrators as they lead us through this evening and guide us through and show us the workings of our country. Thank you, dear God, for your blessings. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 Madam City Manager and Stephanie, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum present.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. I guess we can kind of go down, I know we have our names on here, but we can kind of go down the line and introduce ourselves and just appreciate the hospitality and the interaction here between Lander and our city council. So I'm Brandon Smith. I'm mayor. I've been mayor for about 3.5 months. So I'll let the rest of the veterans tell you how long they've been on here.
Ronnie Abels, councilman for Ward 6. I'm headed into my 9th year.
I'm Matthew Miller. I was elected in 2016, so I'm still relatively new. So it's just been 2 years. I'm actually a Lander alumni. I was a music major, and I've been in Greenwood all my life. So.
Ken Wiltshire, I represent for the City of Greenwood, Ward 4. And I've been on council now, be entering my 3rd term, 9 years like Mr. Abels. And I'm very excited for you all to be here. I think it's a great thing.
Good evening. My name is Betty Bowles, and I represent Ward 3 for the City of Greenwood. I'm in my 4th term as being on City Council. I'd like to thank you for having us with you today to share the things that we do for the city.
Good afternoon. My name's Linda Edwards. I represent Ward 2. I have 20 plus years already under my belt, and I'm going in for 4 more. Glad to be here. Hope we can be of some service to you. Hope we can answer your questions satisfactorily. Just glad to be here.
I'm Nikki Hetto. I represent Ward 1. I've been on council, it's pushing 19, going on 20. So Linda and I and Betty have become fast friends over these years. And again, we're very glad to be here. We look forward to answering your questions. We'd love to have your involvement. And I hope that after this council meeting, you'll be inspired to come see us at City Hall and come listen to the rest of our council meetings, not just a one-time deal. Thank you.
Always welcome. There. 1st and 3rd Mondays of the month. What do we have on the agenda this evening? We have a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miller, second by Ms. Bowles. Any discussion? We're all in favor. All in favor? Approval of the consent agenda is passed 6-0. What do we have next?
I'm going to do a public appearance and have Lucas McMillan come up and then I'll take over.
Great. At this time, we're going to recognize Lucas McMillan from Dr. Lucas McMillan. Here. Lander.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome our mayor, members of our city council, our city staff, and many community members to the Lander University campus. Lander's president, Dr. Richard Cosentino, had certainly planned to be here, but the death of a parent of one of our vice presidents has called him away this afternoon to a funeral. In his absence, we are represented by the university's chief of staff and vice president for governmental relations, Mr. Adam Taylor. And Mr. Taylor joins me in being very glad to have our city's leaders and city staff on our campus. Lander is very proud to partner with our city on initiatives that assist our students' learning, to increase the quality of life for our faculty and staff, and to enhance the lives of all Greenwood community members. Lander enjoys being a hub of learning and a headquarters for artistic, cultural, and athletic events for the citizens of Greenwood and far beyond it. Tonight's event is part of the Achieving the Promise Democracy and the Informed Citizen series of events that is funded by a grant from the South Carolina Humanities Organization. The mission of South Carolina Humanities is to inspire, engage, and enrich the lives of all South Carolinians. And we appreciate the organization's assistance in drawing attention to civic engagement across the Lakelands region last fall and this spring. The presence of our city council here showcases one way for citizens to be engaged in community affairs and to invite reflection upon civic life. We are very proud at Lander of our new city manager, Julie Wilkie, who is an example as an alumna, who after earning her degree in political science, chose to go to graduate school, pursued that degree in public administration, and is now furthering her career as a public service professional. And we're also very proud of Matthew Miller, who is one example of an alumnus who has run for public office. Ms. Wilkie and Mr. Miller are but two examples of Lander alumni around our state and around our region who are actively engaged in community affairs. We hope that tonight's meeting helps our students to see the real work of local government, as well as how decisions at the local level do affect all of our lives. And after some business, we very much appreciate the council's willingness to answer and respond to our students' questions. Everyone in this room, as well as the room below us, Learning Center Room 200, should have a copy of tonight's agenda. You should also have the evaluation form. As part of a grant, we ask that you give us some feedback at the conclusion of tonight's meeting by using that evaluation form. So I look forward to tonight's business. I thank very much the members of our city council and city staff who are with us, and we're glad to be at work together. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. McMillan.
I'm going to take a cue from Dr. McMillan and talk really loud. I'm Julie Wilkie. I'm the city manager, and kind of along with Brandon, I'm relatively new. I was the assistant city manager for about 9 years, and our city manager left at the beginning of December, and so I have been in the city manager role since that time. If there's an evaluation form, I would just ask that you give me all like 5 stars because I'm new, and I recognize that probably everyone in this room is getting fouls credit, but we appreciate you all being here tonight. I remember getting fouls credit and trying to jam those in. So I was hoping that we could come up with something pretty controversial for you guys on the agenda tonight, you know, get some things riled up, but unfortunately this is kind of a basic, boring agenda. But we are looking forward to the question and answer. I know council is looking forward to that as well. I want to take 1 minute, if I could, and just recognize that we have a lot of department heads and staff that are in the room. If you guys are a member of city staff or department head, if you'll just stand up, be recognized. These guys work really hard every single day. I would note their attendance was optional, and that's a lot of people for optional attendance at an evening meeting on a Monday. So, okay, our first agenda item is to consider ordinance number 19-003, amending section 30-207B of the City of Greenwood Code of Ordinances. This is first reading and public hearing. This is related to record ordinance. If you all recall, we discussed this in executive session in a work session, that our current city ordinance does not include any language that would require a record owner to release personal belongings from a towed vehicle, and sometimes can cause some issues that the police department is forced to resolve. So at the request of the Chief Brooks, we're asking the city council to amend this ordinance.
Thank you. Is there anyone of the public that wishes to speak in favor of proposed ordinance number 19-003?
It's not a public hearing, I apologize. It's just first reading.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
All right, well, do we have a motion?
I have a question. Have we received any calls from any of the record service?
I have not received any calls about this
Complaints
at
or
all.
inquiries about the reason we're making this change?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Yes, and we're doing public hearing on both of these, right?
Yeah, we normally do public hearing second.
Yeah, we're doing public hearing on this one at second reading. This is first reading. 'Cause I haven't received any comments from the public at all.
Okay.
No calls at all.
And this brings us in line with Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Department, all right?
Yes, sir. The county and the highway patrol.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who's that second?
Linda?
Linda.
We got a motion by Ms. Bowles, second by Ms. Edwards. I get, is the language identical to the, you said the policies of the Highway Patrol and Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Any additional discussion? All in favor of proposed ordinance number 19-003. Motion passes 6-0.
The city attorney would like for me to let you all know that he did add one section in here that says with or without payment, and that is a little bit different from how the highway patrol and the county reads, just for the record.
And that was to make sure that nobody got blackmailed into paying the fees for the holding the vehicle before they got their little. Yeah. Thank you.
Where do you add that in that sentence?
It's at the beginning,
Not the,
the underlying section.
It's, I think you're looking at the memo. If you go to the actual
Oh.
ordinance, you'll see it. We normally have PowerPoint, so you'll have to bear with us as we scroll.
all right, for, to be on the safe side, I feel like we should probably take another vote on that. Tell me, Mr. Paget, where exactly that's. Okay.
There you go.
So the amendment would be in the ordinance under B, hours, the third sentence would start with or without payment.
Yes, the underlying section is the new part. So it would read, with or without payment at the request of the owner of the towed vehicle or his designee, the wrecker service must immediately release to the owner of the towed vehicle or his designee personal items such as, but not limited to, medicines, medical equipment, keys, clothing, tools of the trade, child restraint systems, and perishable items.
Well, this was, I've got it in my packet. Is that,
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to. I thought this was something you added recently.
No, it was just.
Slightly different from the.
I got you.
said it's identical to the Sheriff's Department Highway Patrol.
I got you.
That first introductory clause with without payment is the only difference, just
Well,
to clarify.
I don't know that we need another vote on it. I thought you meant you had added it today.
But they with or without payment is saying whether or not I pay the toll fee, I'm still allowed to get my belongings out of my car. Okay.
No, Trip says it's introduced. Okay. All right, so we'll move on. See, now I lost my, there we go. All right. Under new business number 2, consider ordinance number 19-004, amending ordinance number 03-10, zoning ordinance chapter 6, supplemental regulations, section 6.1.3.3, construction and maintenance. This is first reading, and I will say that typically we do public hearing at first reading on zoning changes. However, with the change in venue, we thought it would be better to hold public hearing until second reading. Phil Lindler couldn't be with us tonight, but Chris Hudson is here, and if you have any questions about this particular ordinance, he can answer them. If you want to just give a quick overview, Chris?
I'll be glad to. Would you like me to step up there and do it? Can I do it from my seat?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see such a good turnout. We wrote this ordinance, well, I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. I've done commercial review, almost started my 12th year with the county and the city. I authored this. It kind of falls into 3 or 4 categories maybe. You have those large developments that come into town and they've got deep pockets and they don't mind building, Lowe's and, large scale developments of that nature, and they build seas of parking. Then you have folks that are smaller folks that still want to build their own business, still want to build their own building, but maybe don't have quite as deep of pockets, and parking becomes an issue at that level. They want to do that as cheaply as possible because a lot of times business owners see that as sort of a marginal thing that doesn't particularly go towards making money. Then you have those folks that are going into an existing building that have to put up with what was there to begin with, and they don't often want to talk to me about upgrading that parking. And when I say upgrading, I don't necessarily mean adding more, I mean just general upkeep. Filling in potholes, taking the grass and the weeds out, making sure the lines are all there, amending that number based on use. We have a use-based parking matrix that says for each use you have a number of parking spaces that are required. So that becomes a difficulty. And we saw some sort of gaps in the ordinance where folks were not required. We could not point to a place in the ordinance and said, "Thou shalt fill in potholes." So potholes, as they do, start small and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and over time, you're four businesses down the way on the same piece of parking, and depending on the use, you've got large scale trucks and that kind of thing going in and out, and the situation just worsens. So the language that you see before you addresses all of those concerns, sort of unifies the design of that parking at every scale of development, whether it be just infill development in a given building or all the way up to something new build that's on a very large piece of property. So I'll be glad to address, I don't want to walk through the entire ordinance. I know you guys have worked on this. If you have any specific questions, I'll be glad to do that. Or we can walk through the whole thing if you'd like. Nobody gets as excited about parking as a planner.
Is this something that's going to be able to be enforced to businesses already existing, or is it going to have to be going forward?
All of those types of questions for past businesses, if they're still in existence, will go on just like it is. This will go into place as a change in use occurs. So we would already do a parking evaluation. As I said, we're use-based. So if you went from a retail to a restaurant, we would redo that number. This will give us a chance to redo the design and maintenance as well.
Okay.
Specifically the maintenance, which becomes a real issue. The only thing that isn't really a maintenance issue that maybe is a design issue is we've asked for some of the smaller scale car dealerships, specifically used car dealerships, to pave that area where they park those cars so that it's a little safer, a little better, just for ingress and egress, folks walking around, that kind of thing. It brings them in line with the larger businesses that already do that on their own spaces.
We just kindly ask them to, the existing ones.
I often do ask them to, and sometimes folks are amenable to that. I'm not looking to vilify business owners. They want their places to be as nice as they possibly can. Greenwood's an attractive business climate, thanks to the work you guys do, thanks to the work County Council does, and we're a friendly office in that regard. But when push comes to shove, those dollars sometimes are tight, and without an ordinance to back that up, I can only smile so wide, so that may not get done.
But the ones that are grandfathered in, we don't have any, besides asking them, we don't have any.
That's correct. It won't go back. It won't go back and be retroactive in any respect. But those uses change fairly often, and I think there's a sort of a hidden pressure in that you don't want to be the only kid on the block that's not upgrading those services. And as we build that pressure to set a consistent standard, I think it encourages folks to comply even when they don't have to. I've seen that, and that happens. And over time, that's what we're kind of looking for as well.
2 questions, Chris.
Yes, sir.
So the one at the Waffle House there beside the Buck Stove pool, that
Yes, sir.
can't touch it until it changes hands?
Not at the present time.
Right.
But that has changed hands in the past, and I know that owner is desirous to do what we've asked him to. He moved from over across from Salvation Army, was where he used to be in sort of that row of shops, and he did everything we asked him to there, and he did everything that I could ask him to at this location. That business is one of the ones that's an impetus for some of the changes that we've asked for. At the present time, we've been talking about these for a while, and that one we could only ask him for so much. In that instance, it was 2 parking spaces based on the size of his showroom floor or office, and that's all we could get. And we were lucky to get that. So, but I think as time goes by, if he's successful there, I think we'll be able to say, well, you need to come to the standard.
So then the second question is the aprons, is the connecting part. But if you've got a handicap, we're saying they have to pave a handicap place.
Yes, sir. We've always
Are they
asked
going
for
to
that.
pave because you don't want a handicapped person, say Miss Edwards maybe with her walker, You don't want to come off a paved space and go into gravel.
That's what we're trying to do away with specifically, is that type of thing where we had no way to ask for that in the past. Our handicap spaces are pretty much ADA boilerplate language. We've just echoed that and brought it right down into our ordinance. And the where we deal with that is the size, the design, depending on whether you want to make those shared spaces or separate, and their proximity to the doorway of the office or showroom in this respect. That was all we could ask for, because that's what ADA language was. We felt the same way you did, that doesn't do a whole lot of good if you've got an ADA space. They're not necessarily heading into an office. They'd like to go out and look at any outdoor retail, but cars specifically. And you kind of negated the usefulness of the parking if folks can't get around on an uneven, unpaved surface.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that kind of was my question. If there's already a requirement for handicap spaces to be paved under the ADA or the...
Yes, sir.
But we don't have any tools to enforce that.
No, we do, I wasn't clear. It's the connectivity with the rest of the lot that we didn't have the tools to enforce. We always have enforced the ADA requirements of the spaces: number, size, configuration, design details, whether they're shared with a central loading, unloading zone for wheelchairs, that kind of thing. And the location in relation to the door, which the ADA language says that your handicap spaces must be the closest space to the door, regardless of where you have your spaces. Doesn't say they have to be adjacent to the door, it doesn't say they have to be adjacent to a ramp, but it does say they have to be the closest to those facilities. Past that, in these instances where we're trying to amend that language, we didn't have any way to say, for example, if you were headed out to look at a car on the other side of the lot, that what was between your ADA space, which we enforce today, and that car on the other side of the lot was safe or passable. And that's what this language will hopefully fill in that gap.
I guess what I'm asking is, what it looks like you're adding is all parking spaces for disabled persons must be paved as required in section 6.1.5. I'm certainly in favor of all spaces for disabled persons being paved, but if that's already an ADA requirement, is that necessary that we put that in ours?
We already have it in ours in a separate section. So this echoes the section that already exists. We have an entire section that's nothing but parking for disabled folks. And that addresses in greater detail than does this. This just echoes in the construction and maintenance section what we have in the other section of the ordinance and enforce already, just so that as we send these ordinances out, oftentimes when we get into those initial conversations, we just send the ordinance out for review by the folks that are doing that development. So this will have that both in the construction and maintenance section, where they need to be aware of how that's going to be asked of them and what is required, as well as the ADA section, which goes into greater detail, particularly from a design standpoint, which is echoed in that 6.1.5.
Okay.
Is this rule,
It does.
is it really being enforced, especially the one about disabled persons must be paid? Now, we have existing parking lots
Yes, ma'am. and-
that the handicap thing is not, got potholes and,
Yes, ma'am, we sure do, and that's why as those businesses change hands or uses, it actually is not even tied to the change in ownership, it's tied to the change in use. So that as those change in uses occur, we can step in with this ordinance and enforce that language. And that's another reason we wanted to echo that handicap language in two places, is so that we wouldn't have any, for lack of a better term, loophole in the thinking. It's not that folks that I think there are bad actors, of course, in all facets of life, but most of our business owners want to comply, particularly with that. It's just a matter of money sometimes, and we want to put some teeth in the ordinance to make sure that that parking gets the same attention that handicap ramps do, that width of doorways do, that width of parking spaces do. So we hope to amend those as time goes on.
This is not really, has anything to do with the design. This is just the keeping it up, maintaining it, keeping the potholes filled,
Yes, sir.
and keeping the lines marked and that type.
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct. This is primarily construction and maintenance. The only place we reference anything having to do with design is referencing the section on handicap design 615. Because, like I said, we wanted to hit that one specifically on.
And I guess just reading 6.1.3.3A, in the inverse non-handicap spaces, in the situation where there may be some overflow parking, could still be in grass?
We have encouraged that, as two ways. Pervious paver is what we're really pushing toward. If you do overflow parking, we hope that you'll still do something that's a little safer, a little more uniform than is crusher run or even grass, but will allow for some water to get through that element, because all of our required parking is impervious. It's got to be paved, asphalt or concrete. So that excuse me, that overflow parking, we have tried to maybe give some folks the option to do something a little different, because that marries up with our 75-25 pervious impervious ratio. You've got to keep 25% open space, and our engineering department does that. We've also referenced, if you'll note, the stormwater regulations, and that goes directly towards the stormwater review done by the engineering department, so that they have that option on overflow parking to maintain both a stable parking surface and some idea that water is handled where it falls, rather than getting in your back pocket, making you redesign your catch basin or having that runoff, particularly for parking lots, because that's a point source problem where you got oil and all the stuff comes out of cars, and then you get a first flush rain and boom, that's right into the storm sewers, and that's not where anybody wants it. So that's how that's done.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve 19004.
Second? Do we have a second?
Second. There you go.
We have a motion by Ms. Bowles and a second by Ms. Edwards. All in favor of proposed ordinance number 19-004? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, what do we got next?
All right, new business number 3 is to receive questions from Landers University students and provide answers. So Dr. McMillan was kind enough to gather questions in advance. So rather than having students come up here or stand up and ask their questions, I have them here. In the interest of time, I've gone through and kind of selected some that I think cover a pretty wide variety of topics. And so I'll read the question. I feel like it's like a political debate. The moderators.
Lucas is good enough. He's moderator.
So I'll read the questions out, and then you guys just chime in. Good?
Okay.
All right. And if the student's name is listed, I'll give their name. If not, some of these are just anonymous questions. So question number 1 is, how would you encourage students to become more involved within the community?
Well, I know of several, I'm just going to speak from personal experience. I know several Landers students who are in the art department, and they are very involved in the arts organizations that we have here in town, and they have received not only FALS credits, but they've also received internships, which are great on resumes for job and job skills. And so we have had at the Art Center a variety of, and we've very much enjoyed Landers students that have come, and they come to listen to the artist artist lectures, they work, they get gallery experience, they get actually fundraising experience, how to do a fundraiser. So I've had personal experience, and I believe that the Lander students that are in the art department at Lander that have become involved have really enjoyed, not only have we enjoyed and benefit from their expertise, but vice versa from ours in that organization. So there are organizations that would welcome and actually seek student involvement, and believe it or not, a lot of the nonprofits, there is opportunity for business majors because nonprofit is an industry, and they're looking for funds, and it has to be run like a business. So there are internship possibilities with industries in Greenwood, nonprofits in Greenwood. If you have an interest in music and theater and art, the arts organizations are always looking for people. So there are things, and believe it or not, we have receptions that are free and open to the public. We feed you, I mean, so free of charge. And I know students like to eat. So you can become involved. And as I said, when we started this, you know, our meetings are open to the public. If you want to know what's going on in the city of Greenwood, the door is open and you can come and sit. And some of them meetings are very interesting. So we also have Laura Hudson here, who's the Uptown manager. There's free concerts. You know, I know some of the music may not appeal to you, but her door is open too. If you have bands that you want to do or suggestions for open air concerts, you know, come talk to her. Our visitors and tourism director is here. The Chamber, okay, the Chamber and Uptown, they're always seeking volunteers for the Festival of Discovery, for the Festival of Flowers is a volunteer organization. Y'all could volunteer. Any one of you. You could be stuffing topiaries at the greenhouse. You could learn horticulture from horticultural people. So there is a way that you can enrich yourself, get educational internships, and real life work experience. That's how you get involved in the community.
I think just having been here at Lander for not 4 years, it was 5 years that I was here. From that time, there are a lot of things I've noticed now where there are more opportunities to be connected to the community than when I was here, and it hasn't been that long. I graduated in 2013. But, you know, you have transportation now that'll take you uptown and take you to different places in Greenwood. But I just, you know, you're all tech savvy and you can go on Facebook, but I'd encourage you to, you know, follow the City of Greenwood's Facebook page or Uptown Greenwood, Visitors and Tourism. They all have really good social media presence, and you know, you can see what's going on, and there really are, like Nikki said, there are things all the time. This is our second weekend at the Community Theater of Oklahoma, and I know there are a good number of music majors that are involved, and a couple that aren't music majors that are involved in that show, and we've got some alumni involved in that show, and you know, we try to get Lander students involved in those things uptown as much as we can. But definitely, if you know, I know you're all probably on your phones all the time, like I am. So you know, just follow those pages, and you know, you can definitely see what's going on and opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, and you can also say, I'm sorry. I was also gonna say that Ms. Hutto and Councilman Miller has good recommendations and suggestions. But to simplify what you could do, those who you can just contact the city manager and let her know that you're willing to volunteer your services. And what we can do can notify you when there's a need, because we have several festivals, we have several things that's going on all during the year that we would, I'm sure they would be, she would just be excited to have some extra volunteers, especially for the Festival of Discovery and the Festival of Flowers. I mean, we'd be begging and pleading. I mean, it's a little warm and it's a little hot, but it would be very rewarding because you'll get to meet so many different people from all over the world, all over. So just contact our city manager, Julie Wilkie, and give her your name and number, and you know, we can contact you.
Or our new assistant, city manager.
I'm working
His
on
first
that.
day.
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan's first day.
Yes.
Laura asked me to mention too that we always have internship opportunities, particularly in the summer. That Ms. Bowles was talking about. We're a government. We don't have tons of money, so we really like free interns. And I know sometimes you have to do free internships for school credit. I did many myself, so there are lots of opportunities to be engaged for sure.
Well, I was going to say, they've all given you great ideas. But I would say, first of all, to become involved in your community, you need to know your community. There's a whole big another world on the side of Lander College, University. You need to know each other. You need to know who live in your community. Who is your next door neighbor? You'd be surprised, there are a lot of people that live next door and don't know their next door neighbors. You want to become involved in your community? Find out who your next door neighbor is. What's going on? And one important thing, now you all are here for this council meeting. Now we'd like to see you on March 11th. That's a way to get involved in your community. Know what's going on. Don't always depend on somebody else to tell you, because they're not going to give you the whole story. They're going to give you the good part. Now we are kind of civil to each other, but council meetings get rowdy sometimes. That's because each one of us have a different opinion. And I believe in my opinion. I'm going to stand firm in my opinion. So, you know, it gets a little heated. But when we finish, we all still love one another. At least we act like we do. That's all I can say. But we'd like to have you involved in the community. You'd be surprised. Get involved while you're here. If you don't go home over the summer, there's plenty of work. City manager will put you to work. Find something for you to do. But I say get involved. But to get involved, know your community. Know who lives next door to you. Know who lives across the street. Know who lives down the street. How many of you know how many people live on the street over from here? That's community. You know, do you know them? Do they know you? Get involved.
I want to thank those of you, especially those professors that have brought people. I know the Lander, there was a lot of you at the Arts Centre the other day when we had an exhibition, so I know that your professors bring you, and I know a lot of you have probably helped at Grey Street Park, and that's mostly been through the physical boys, the basketball and all those sort of guys that have helped out there. But Mr. Klaus, would you stand up, please? This is a gentleman. How old are you, Klaus?
How old are you?
Yeah.
88.
He's 88. He handles all the caretaking, all the groundwork, all the weed pulling for all the parks that are currently in around about us. Great Street, West Cambridge. This is the guy that does it. Do you think he needs some help? Do you think you can help him? There's one of the ways you can get out. And I'm not going to steal the mayor's... Thank you, Klaus. You can sit down now. I'm not going to steal the mayor's thunder because I know he's got something else. But another thing you need to think about, those of you that are Greenwood residents, the fact that you're here today, you've shown that you're wanting to help the community. So why not run for election? There's so many people now. No young people are joining the police force. No young people are joining the fire. No young people are coming forward into, horrible word, politics anymore. Why not? So the fact that you're here and you're in these classes, I know some of you are here as prisoners because you've got to be here for whatever it is that Julie talked about. I'm British, so I have no idea about all this. And so now's your opportunity. I mean, this is not always as boring as you saw. You know, sometimes it's actually... we get into real scrums and fights. So, you know, you've taken the first step, so now's your chance to get going.
Yeah, I think you can tell Mr. Wiltshire's passion, being someone who was not born in this country, that came here and takes it seriously, doesn't take it for granted. There are so many opportunities to get involved, and I don't want to sit here and sound like we're preaching to y'all. Y'all got to do this. You got to do that. 'Cause, I mean, certainly, I would love for it to be more interactive than that. But I'm probably stretching it a little bit. But I feel like it really wasn't that long ago that I was sitting in the same seats y'all were. So I understand, especially ones that I was going to get folks to raise their hand if they were, here just for credit or what. But I won't put y'all on that spot. But I feel like there's, even in the 20 years since I was in college, there's just so many more opportunities that you're aware of through social media. I mean, whatever your passion is, I know they've been mentioned before, but I mean, if it's helping with nonprofits, we've got places like Meg's House, Beyond Abuse, mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, Parks and Trails. I remember Klaus, the softball team, came out a few weeks ago and helped out. And so if you've got a team or a group, there's just, and I get it too. I mean, sometimes there's so many opportunities, you're almost wondering where to begin, but I'll tell you, there's literally something every single night of the week if you want to get involved. I've got 3 kids, so sometimes I have to politely say no every once in a while. But one of our, and I don't know how many of y'all read the Index Journal on a regular basis, and I don't know if Benson's still here. But but trash is one of our big initiatives, not just the city, but the county. And so we've got a lot of different groups, whether it's Keep Greenwood County Beautiful, Palmetto Pride, Adopt a Highway. My wife, her initiative is she's Trash Time with Tara. Once a month, she gets on and tells us where we're going to go in the city and pick up trash. We welcome y'all. We picked up Mathis Road this past Saturday, and when you have 35 people, that gets done in no time. And Mathis Road, I considered ground zero in terms of our trash problem. And it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I've really come to understand the direct correlation between cleaning up and improved quality of life. And that's a little thing you can do. So I was sitting in your chair not that long ago, and I probably would not have been one to volunteer. I had better things to do, more fun to get into in fraternity, in my, whatever. So I just applaud y'all being here and hopefully be even more involved than I was 20 years ago. So.
Anybody that wants to get involved in community activity, there's dozens of nonprofits that would just love to see you come knock on their door and ask them, could you help them? Because they're needing people to, and they love young people to come out. So they're all energetic and ready to go.
There's nightlife too. I know that's probably where that question was coming from. So nightlife. Okay, the next question comes from Naja Jones. I hope I got that right. Lander's student population is growing. How is Greenwood adapting to that, and how is it affecting the community?
It's affecting the community because we don't have enough rental property, plain and simple. And we don't have enough quality housing other than campus housing for a growing student body. And that's a definite issue, because I know lots of you probably, you might live on campus the first 2 years, and then you're looking around to find some place to rent. I get called, it's obvious that's why we unanimously passed another development that's coming to town, because we need quality rental property for the growing student body at Lander. You can't grow if you can't live here. Some of you can't commute. And I know there's a large commuting base, but some of you who do commute would love to be able to have campus housing or housing that's close to the university that would be adequate for you at an affordable rate. Safe, affordable housing. It's an issue across the entire state. It's not just Greenwood. So that's how it's affecting the community, and we're pushing, and there are several business leaders that we're asking developers to come here And there's a pushback too. There's a pushback from residential communities that say, it's going to be, we don't want multifamily, we don't want apartments. There's too much traffic. But it's a give and a take. And the reason why it's a balancing act. To find that happy balance of not overbuilding for infrastructure but also providing housing. So we're pushing. We just passed, so we're pushing for housing. And again, it's something that the college itself has to look at. Are they providing enough for their freshman and sophomore classes? So that's an issue where the community has to talk together about what the university is providing as compared to what the community is providing.
Yeah, I've had many conversations with Adam and President Cosentino, very forward-thinking folks in terms of growing Lander. To follow up to what Ms. Hutto's mentioned, we certainly want to continue to develop Greenwood, but we're trying to do it responsibly. Do it with the least amount of impact possible to neighboring communities, and that's something that we take very seriously. That when there's a neighborhood that's upset about other development, we certainly listen to what they have to say, because that's where local government makes decisions that affect people directly. So yes, we're trying to do something about about rental properties, make sure there's an open atmosphere to build responsibly.
As you know, you've got a very active president in President Costantino. He doesn't know how to stand still, really, essentially. I met with him the other day and I showed him we're being proactive here in terms of trying to see what we can do together as two different communities. And I showed him all the empty spaces that we have that may be of some use to Lander's development. And we threw some ideas about. He's also got some dramatic ideas of his own. And so I'm sure this is going to be dealt with. Now, obviously, building takes years, so don't expect it to happen tomorrow. But is that not quite answering the question that was asked? But that's just information for you on that topic.
And I also like to state that with the growth of Lander University population, it grows the economy, it grows our city. I mean, we applaud. I mean, I see the bus riding around Greenwood. I had no idea it transports students in such various places, from the mall to the restaurant to downtown. And we truly, as a municipality, we appreciate that. Well, I mean, if you're growing, we're growing. And I just think it's a win-win situation. So yes, I just feel like with the growing population of Lander University, it is also growing our economy in the city of Greenwood.
When you stay here the weekend and don't go out of town, and if you stay here and you eat at the Mill House or you go to the Buffalo Grill, you basically help, you help us do the things that we've done in the Uptown, because the reason why we've done that is because you've eaten in our restaurants. Your parents who come to visit on Parents Weekend sleep in our hotels, okay? So when we get hospitality tax dollars and accommodation tax dollars, we basically can grow and do the things that you've seen in the Uptown. And the only way we can spread from the Uptown to the outlining areas, if people eat out more, stay in hotels more, because that is our source of revenue. Property tax doesn't cover building new buildings or doing new things and renovating. Property tax covers police and fire and sanitation and those basic necessities. So if we want to, the reason why the Uptown is looking the way the Uptown is looking is because we have those other sources of revenue. And those other sources of revenue can only be used to promote things like people coming to Greenwood, people eating in Greenwood, that hospitality tourism industry. So please stay in town. Don't go away over the weekend. Come eat here, party here, go to the grocery store here, go buy an old, stay here if you can. That helps us do the things that you would probably like us to see here, because Lander itself, all the nonprofits in town in the city limits, they don't pay any property tax. So every time Lander buys another piece of property, we love you. Don't think of this as not loving you. It goes off the tax books because it's a non-profit. Nonprofits don't pay property tax, but you still need fire and service and certain things. So by you staying here and by people coming to visit you while they're here, that helps our tax base. So it is a very symbiotic relationship. So it's interesting. The more you stay here and the more you spend here, the better it is for all of us.
I'll just add, in addition to staying here on the weekends, and look, I know, the beach, mountains, whatever. I don't tell anybody not to go to the beach if they have an opportunity. But in addition to staying here on the weekends, we want y'all to stay here after graduation. And we want to provide an environment where young professionals have job opportunities. We've got tons of industry here in town that's mind-blowing in terms of the worldwide scope that a lot of these places like Teijin, Lonza, Fuji, SPF, Caterpillar, they all have. So our goal is to provide an environment. We're not trying to be Greenville, not trying to be Charleston, not trying to be Atlanta. We're not trying to be anything we're not, but to provide a welcoming atmosphere to young professionals. So, if y'all ever have any ideas about how we can do that better, please let us know.
38% of the acreage, I think I'm right, Julie? Of the acreage which makes up the city of Greenwood, 38% is non-revenue earning. And that's the Self Hospital, Lander, Wesley Commons, Carolina Health, all those ones there, churches, et cetera, et cetera. You get no revenue, other than Lander provides its own police force, but everybody else has to be covered by us for fire, police, sanitation, without putting into the pot. So that's probably relevant for all of you that are studying business and politics.
Okay, this question comes from Jake Powell, and because he's in the front here and he has a name tag on, I can see that this is he's an ambassador, and he's right in my line of sight. I didn't mean to call you out. I feel like everybody probably knows who you are, though. So, what is the best characteristic a government employee could have when working in local government, and why is this trait important to possess?
Go and work for Publix, learn how customer service works. Publix employees stand up. And it's the most amazing culture.
Or Chick-fil-A.
They teach you customer service. Your job as a government employee is customer service. You've got to be outgoing, warm, happy, friendly, most of the time.
I was going to say.
And so that's my helpful people. That's what we need in government.
Wow.
Well, and it's not like state government or federal government where you're seeing it from far off. You're not able to just go talk to that person that you want to talk to, even if you call somebody in a government office to talk with them. You're not going to talk to them. You're going to talk to their staff. But here, you can call any one of us. Our phone numbers are on the city website, and all the city staff are every day seeing people direct. They're seeing the people that they deal with on a daily basis, and that's key. Definitely is customer service, and that's what helps us grow business. That's what helps us grow relationships with Lander or the hospital, and help us grow the town to what we really want it to be.
Sometimes you have to be a good listener.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people just want to talk. You don't have to say a word. Just listen. I want to be heard. I don't want you to say anything, but I want to be heard. You have to be a good listener. People got to have faith and confidence in you. What's the word? If I tell you something in confidence, I expect you to keep it. They want to know. You see a lot of times on TV where somebody's told a politician something, and he's told 10 people. Then it becomes the media knows about it, and there's a media frenzy. by the time it gets to the media, the real question is never asked because it's been changed 5 or 6 times. So sometimes you have to listen to people. Another characteristic, you got to have the gift of gab. You got to talk. People want to hear you. When I talk to you, I want you to respond. And then most of all, you got to be able to take criticisms because they shoot them at you. You know, all of us up here at one time or another, we've had people to tell us, you're not doing anything. I'm not doing anything, neither are you because you didn't run for this position. You know, that's what I tell people. If I'm not doing anything, then you get up and you run. Don't sit back and talk. You know, being a politician, when I first came, threw my hat in the ring 20 years ago, I didn't mean to stay this long. But I'm still here. I enjoy what I'm doing. And at times I talk and I disagree. And don't look at me, Ms. Bowles. But what I'm saying is you got to love what you do. It makes a difference. But we're telling each and every last one of you, sometime or another, if you choose to stay in Greenwood, live in Greenwood, when these positions come over, we're getting old. We are getting old, and we recognize that fact. Throw your hat in the ring. Be on the other side and see how it feels. Matthew is about the youngest one we have on here, so just give him another year or two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I echo everything that Ms. Edwards said, and when she mentioned, you know, we're the ones actually doing the job. Tripp Padgett, our city attorney, gave me the Teddy Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena. If you've never read it, I would ask you to do yourself a favor and read that. It's about public service and criticism that you receive. I'm a naturally a pretty sensitive guy, and so I've had to get some thick skin as well. But I would encourage y'all to, if you don't remember anything else, Teddy Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena.
The one thing that seems like the nation does not have a grip on, but local government does, and what I love so much about city council is that we're nonpartisan. There's no, we basically, as a group, look at the city of Greenwood and say, as a group collectively, what is the best thing for the city of Greenwood? And if we don't all agree, we still have respect for each other. We compromise when we need to. We listen to all sides of the story, and we do it, I think, with the general consensus, what's best for Greenwood as a whole. Greenwood is so small that you can't just say, oh, this is good for my ward, or this is not good for my ward, or why is this ward getting it? And so there's a balance, and I think to be a good public servant, you have to be balanced and think of things. It's not just, I got to win, but how can this be a win-win for all of us? And so by looking at that and basically subduing your individuality for the good of the whole is a key factor in local government, and I wish at the state level and at the national level they could take a page from local government.
The only thing I need to say is that we represent all the people.
All the people.
Not just one certain group, but we represent all.
So I know I'm not on city council, but as a government employee, I would say that you have to have a lot of tact. And that comes with maturity too. I mean, when I first started as a local government or in government, you know, I was young. But once you can't say whatever you want to say.
No,
Okay?
you
It's not
can't.
like you own your own car wash. Some guy comes to your car wash and you don't like his haircut. And you say, no, I don't like your haircut. And he says, well, fine, I'm not going to get my car washed here. it doesn't work that way. So I would say you have to have a lot of tact, to bite your tongue a lot, and like they said, you have to listen a lot. So I'm going to skip around a little bit.
I was going to say, I thought that might segue into the next question a little.
Well, do y'all want me to ask that one?
Which
I
one?
just, in the interest of time, I'm trying to move, but I'll ask this one. This is probably like a one-word answer for you guys. What's the hardest part of your job as a member of City Council?
Funding.
Funding.
Yep,
Yeah.
funding. Where's the money?
I'd say that I'd go along with what Julie just said, though, is because as somebody that is young, and I can get very emotional when it comes to talking about politics or even on this level local things, that it's really hard to sit and listen to what people have to say without jumping at the first possibility to say something. When I was campaigning 2 years ago, it was what election it was, and whatever you think about that election, there were a lot of things people felt like they could say. So I was campaigning in my ward, and I heard things that I didn't agree with at all, and I just kind of had to sit and say, well, that doesn't maybe not matter totally, but like Nikki said, we care about Greenwood. I'm running because I care about Greenwood. I'm not running because of state politics or who's going to be president. I'm running because I care for the city. And I think that was the toughest thing for me.
What about close in age? Tact is a little bit harder. Like I said, you learn it, the older you get more tact.
He does a
Maybe
good job.
not. Some people lose tact as they get older. I don't know. I say all the
Maybe it's a
time, you know
curve.
what? I say all the
Yeah.
time, like, my grandma's like 84, and I
They have
she'll
no
just
tact.
say things, and I'll say, just let her say whatever she wants. She's old,
Matt does a good job of defending our honor on
He
social
does.
media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does, yeah. Okay. So we're going to jump down a little bit. This question was actually asked by several students, and there were several questions related to violence. I'm just going to kind of pick one that kind of encompasses them all, which is what is being done to stop drug distribution, gang activity in Greenwood, and what's specifically being done to protect Lander from the issue of rising crime. Everybody's jumping at once.
Well, we had a lot of meetings with the county, and we found out a lot in terms of, we saw there was lots of, as we've talked about, organizations that could help a lot of people, but I don't know if we can literally sit here and say, solve the problem. It's easy to say it's societal, cultural, whatever, but we have it. I'm a big proponent of police. I think we need one heck of a lot more policemen in the city of Greenwood. He didn't pay me to say that. And that, I think, is one of the solutions. I think you have to have a much more reactive police force. I think they have to be very visible. I think they have to be seen. And I think that is one of the ways that our big problem is just getting one policeman costs a whole lot of money when you go into pensions and medical insurance and equipment and the car and everything else. So funding is always a problem. It's one of our major problems. But I think that a higher visibility in the city and in lots of areas of the city would help somewhat. And other than that, I'm not clever enough to have any other answer than that.
Well, I think one thing that came out of a lot of the meetings that we had with the county and with a lot of nonprofit leaders, and this connects back to being involved in the community too, is that, as the city and the county, we're tight on funding a lot. We don't have what we're supposed to get from the state government, so we have to decide what we need to fund and what we can't fund, and so I think that when it comes to being involved in your community, then there's one thing that would really help to be involved is that there are a lot of nonprofits that can get youth involved in the community, and it's not something that's going to take effect now, because there are things that haven't been supported for the last decade more maybe, and now you see a lot of youth that have grown up and don't have those opportunities. So, you know, who's saying what they're going to end up doing? So, you know, we have to work now to get people involved in organizations that help children and help with education and community involvement. And, you know, 10 years from now, we'd be in a lot better position than we are now.
Also,
Go ahead.
sorry. Drugs is a serious problem for Greenwood, and we continue to work with our law enforcement in supporting everything that they do. They're doing with what they have to work with as far as the number of police officers. That's difficult when you have 4 different crimes going on in 4 different sections of Greenwood. So yes, we do need more officers. We also need the help from the community as well. If you see something, say something. But we have a situation where we see things and everyone is afraid to say something. And that would help a lot to solve some of the crimes and some of the things that are going on within our city and our communities. Also, I feel that the law needs to change. The prosecuting law needs to change for the state of South Carolina. It's set up whereas that it's just a revolving door for violence, for persons who are arrested for different crimes. We sometimes look at a situation where there's a report where a person been arrested 15 times, and they're still walking around on the street. So the laws for South Carolina, and this is where you can help us and help local government and state government. Write your legislators, demand requesting for the change in law, study the law, see how the process works when there's a crime is committed. I was devastated. I mean, how can you be walking around as a civilian with 3 charges for attempted murder? So until that law change, that will make a difference as well. That's the way I feel.
That was like I stated in the beginning. Know your community. Know who's coming in and who's going out. There has never been a community that I've lived in that I didn't know. My kids used to tell me, Mom, they're going to blow your brains out. I said, well, they'll blow me out looking. It's not because I sit here and didn't say anything. You know, you have instances where people see things, and by the time the officer get there, 50 people can be standing out there, and nobody saw anything. And the first thing we attempted to holler is, the police aren't doing anything. But what is the community doing? Somebody saw something, but we're not telling anything. And like Ms. Bowles said, I say all the time, you'll go to county council meeting and pack it out. You'll go to city council meeting and pack it out when there are issues you don't agree with. But nobody goes to the State House and pack it out and let your legislator know, I'm just tired of you. The laws you're dealing with, you need to leave that alone for a little while and straighten out what you already have on the books. There's no sense in keep adding laws and they're not being enforced. You know, they went back in session and I just said, well, here we go again. Going round and round. We're looking for new laws and we got all these old laws. And I know Chief Brooks get tired because you're picking up the same people over and over just to slap them on the hand and send them out. And they are the very ones that cause problems in your neighborhood. If you've never been to court, Lee Miller or Judge Brown would love to have you. You'd see their hands are tied. And why? Because of the law.
The law.
And it don't make no sense. I agree with Ms. Bowles. Somebody been arrested 5 times for attempted murder. What you waiting on them? Kill them? And then we're going to do something? You know, it's sad. We're in a sad state. So, you know, we got to get up and do something. We got to give them all the help we can.
But that's a very, very wise lady down that side of me there. And that's one of the key things to everything that you all share now as millennials, in that you've got all these things you're not communicating about. You're not communicating about depression. You're not communicating about suicide. You're not communicating about attempted rapes. You're not communicating about drug use. You're not communicating about when you see a crime and saying to somebody, some police officer, it was that car, that was the license, it was white, it was red, it was green, it went that way. And all these things are connected. You all got to talk to each other. In talking to each other, you have power. You've got to talk to each other. You've got to communicate. All these things that I just mentioned are rampant through. And so the only way to solve it is everybody being a village and talking to each other and raising the children of the village.
Yeah, what's frustrating, to follow up to what Ms. Bowles was mentioning, just without boring y'all too much, a lot of these, the folks that get arrested, the bail bonds rates are so low, they can get out with really no problem. And so, you know, as a city, we could sit here and establish a minimum rate for bail bonds, but they just go out in the county. And then, so it's really something that statewide needs to be addressed. But, I mean, it was, safety in Greenwood was my #1 campaign issue there in 2018, and remains my #1 issue. It's always a pleasure to these last 3 months to serve as mayor, but there's certainly those things that keep you up at night. And we're not unique in our problems here in Greenwood, but what we're trying to be is unique in our solutions to these problems. And, you know, it's, I think, again, I don't want to talk in too many generalities, but it's about giving this next generation hope, like Mr. Miller said, so that we don't have 15 years from now the same problem, trying to break that cycle. And I'm a big fan of our law enforcement, but I don't know that we don't necessarily need a police state either. We could absolutely use more police officers to help, but I don't know that if you had a police officer for every single person, I mean, it's about fundamentally changing some behaviors and breaking that cycle as well.
Okay. What plans are being made to help fix roads and infrastructure in the city?
Oh, Lord.
It says specifically, some of our potholes are really bad. And can you push for more funding, or is that strictly county business? And for your benefit, several students asked that question.
That's
a
taboo.
loaded question.
Well,
That's taboo.
yeah.
Well, to start with, most of the roads in the city are not cities, they belong to the county or they belong to the state. So we can only fix the roads that belong to the city, and we do that through funds that are gathered from gasoline tax. It goes to the State House in Columbia, and they send us it back, and then they allocate it around and about. We get, on average, about $300,000 a year, and with that, I don't know if anybody knows how much it costs. It's very expensive to put asphalt down and do roads. But with that, we choose
The worst.
selectively, very carefully,
The worst of the worst.
the worst of the worst, and we do that. But some of the roads that are really bad are state roads, like Laurel Avenue. I mean, that is one that came up the other day, and that is not, we can't do anything about that, because that's a state road. So.
So actually, you need to complain to the city, the county, and the state, depending upon which road it is. Pretty much.
We're unique in that, I think, if you don't know that, with South Carolina, a lot of states, you know, this either the counties own, I mean, it's really the counties or the cities own a lot of their roads, whereas in South Carolina, there's a load of roads that are state-owned. And we could fix them, but we don't. We have a limited amount of money, so it's hard for us to say, well, we're going to spend it here, and you know, when the state should be doing that, in our opinion. You know, and I live on Gracemont, which is right behind the Dixie, and a lot of students cut through there. And this is something that came up when we had a contentious meeting last month and had a lot of people worried about traffic on their road. So I said, I live on a state street. It's a neighborhood, and you wouldn't really think that it was a state road. And all the time when I was campaigning, I heard from people about how they wanted traffic control or being able to put speed bumps in because it is a neighborhood, or stop signs or anything like that. And then you hit that roadblock of, oh, it's a state road. We can't do anything about it. So there are a lot of things holding us back when it comes to fixing streets.
I would say that we have a pretty good relationship with our state DOT, and we do have the ability to fix potholes here and there. We're not going to have money to pave the whole entire road, but if you see a pothole, you should let me know, because if you don't, the odds that we know it's there might be pretty slim. We can't fix a pothole that we don't know about. So if you know about one, let new assistant Ryan know.
Well, and DOT is doing like a pothole filling blitz. Like if you go to the DOT website, I think that they still have it open where you can tell them where a pothole is, and they're trying to fix as many of them as they can right now.
Every year the city they make a list, all the councilmen here, but we're not guaranteed we're going to get those roads fixed. Because County Transportation Commission is the one who says we fix roads, and which roads we fix. So really, we're wasting our time looking at roads.
It's Ronnie's pet thing.
To be honest with you,
we have
several years ago, we were overruled by 7 roads in one community, and the council voted unanimously to fix them. And the chairman of the Transportation Committee came up and said, we're not fixing any of those roads. So it didn't do us any good to even look at roads that year.
I'm going to do 2 more questions, and we'll wrap it up. Is that good for everybody? That's good. All right.
One. Don't answer that.
I know.
Just one.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to jump around just a little bit, Council. I'm sorry. In looking at the city's budget, what components of the budget would you advocate to be increased, and what components would you advocate to be decreased? And if Hannah Brunson is in the room, she asked that question.
I'd say that there's nothing I'd advocate to be decreased. I mean, at least in the 2 years that I've been around already, I know that our city has had to cut as much as we can, because especially from 10 years ago when we had the recession, our funding now has decreased a lot, and we're not funding things where we would want to. And that has helped, I think, with making sure there's not a lot of fat. There's a lot of things that were cut that department chairs said, well, maybe we don't need this. But when it comes down to it, a city provides a lot of services that are needed. It's hard to say that we would want to cut any of them. And there's things, of course, that I would personally want to fund more, like I think parks is one. We have a lot of people in the community that have for a long time volunteered their time and money and resources to help with recreation and parks in Greenwood, but it's been really hard for government entities in Greenwood to really invest because of those cuts in funding, invest in those things.
That was very good. And the only other thing I would add to that, I would love if I wouldn't cut anything within the budget, advocate for any decrease, but I would love for us if we can find a way to increase our resources so that we can refurbish neighborhoods, so that we can have better housing, so that we can demolish some of the old houses that are boarded up and abandoned. We all are very passionate about our cities, growing our city and taking care of our city and getting rid of the things that are just, let's say, we just want to beautify our city. We want our city to grow. And I wish we had more monies in the budget where we could enhance our neighborhoods, where we can refurbish our neighborhoods. Because right now we're working on trying to make sure that, I don't know whether we'll be able to be approved for a CSBG grant. A lot of the cities like Greenville, Spartanburg are eligible for those grants, where they can rehab houses and things like that. Whereas right now, it's hard for us to even qualify because of the population of Greenwood. And I think that's what's in there. Am I right now?
We're
It's
not
a
an entitlement community, so we don't get that funding automatically. We have to compete through a grant process.
Through a grant process. So yes.
And that's another thing I think somebody mentioned earlier about talking to state legislators too. You know, I have to tell people all the time, a lot of these things we need to talk to the state about. Right now, there's a bill going through to kind of increase our local government funding. So the state has not funded education and local governments like they personally said they would. They passed laws that said we will fund state or local governments and education to this extent, and they haven't done it. And there have been lawsuits about it, especially in education. They still haven't fixed it. I could go on and on about that, but you know, with local government fund, they're finally doing something. We have been going to them and yelling for years. I know about getting back to where we're supposed to be in the city. There's an Index Journal article recently. The city and the county here have been out millions of dollars over the last 10 years because they haven't funded the way they should, and that hurts us. That hurts the things that we would want to do. It makes us have to raise taxes, and we look like the bad guy, you know. So we get the calls, but these are things that, you know, we're having to fund fire and police. We can't. We don't want to cut back on those things, but we bite the bullet and take the hit when it comes to raising taxes. When really, you know, those things we should be supported better from the state.
Don't have a heart attack if you heard the word tax. It's not the latest cuss word. It funds everything, and everybody wants more services. They don't want less. And we're looking very earnestly at different ways that we can increase our revenue, and that might be that we increase what's called the sales tax. But at the same time as we do that, we would be reducing the property tax. So by doing that, you reduce the burden on the citizens that live in the city of Greenwood, because we can't keep going back to that well, which is a finite amount of people. There's some point or other where they can't pay everything that needs to be paid. So the way to change that is to get the 40% of people that live and work and play, that live outside, work and play, and they come into town. It's 40% of people in all the restaurants and everything else, is to have an increase in the sales tax so we get more from them, all the visitors. That unfortunately requires everybody to be singing on the same hymn book. You as a group of people, the citizens have to understand it, the county council has to understand it, and then we have to get it through a referendum. So, you know, I'm starting to preach already that it's a tax cut for us as the citizens of Greenwood, but it's an increase on a sales tax, which is all you'll hear about is it's an increase on sales tax.
Well, I think this is a time of the year when it's budget time. That's a meeting you should come to. Because me personally, I get very upset when we have to start the budget for fear of having to cut anybody. Because cutting people mean people lose their jobs, and I've never been for that. So if I had to do it, and there's not much we can decrease in the budget, because everything is needed. We need more officers. And I noticed that there was a question about police cars. But where do people think we get this money if we don't raise taxes? You know, we sit there and we have headaches and we know, oh boy, this is going to be it. It's budget time. And people here say it's a possibility. It doesn't mean we're going to do it. We're just thinking about it. And it goes haywire. But when it comes, for me personally, when it's budget time, I'm crunching. Because I don't want to see nobody get cut. You know. Do we need this? Yes, we need every employee we got and more. But we just don't have the money to do it with. I don't see anything in the budget most of the time that I would decrease. And that's because we need everything that we have. We need police, we need fire, we need this, we need our sanitation department. And if anybody say we don't need those things, then I don't know where they living. I know that, you know. So when it comes down to budget, it really gets crunchy because we're not very friendly to each other.
Well, the other thing is too, we we can't print money like the federal government, and we can't be in deficit because Stephanie won't let us. Our finance director won't let us. So we don't run in the red. We don't run in the red, and a lot of governments do run. So we run fiscally. We're fiscally solid, and the only way we can be so is if we're lean, and we had, you know, but funding is the biggest issue we have.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't feel that we have a spending problem here in Greenwood, but we definitely have a revenue problem, and as Nikki was pointing out, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you, our finance director, Stephanie Dorn, has cut all the fat. She knows every number and has done an amazing job to allow us to work with what we've got, get the most out of what we've got. And just, you know, I'd love to get more police officers to support Chief Brooks and Jeff Crisp over here, and more firemen to make sure everybody was safe. And so that would certainly be one thing, but I can tell you it is, we do the absolute most we can with our money. There's no lavish parties that we're throwing, and anything that you may see, well, you're able to do this. We have some accommodations tax and hospitality tax that helps pay for that. But yeah, and again, as with other things, we're not unique in this problem. So we're as Matt mentioned, we're hoping that we're finally going to have a fix from our state legislature this year. It may not be perfect, but hopefully it'll be what everybody can live with and bring us some certainty. But anyway, I think that brings us to conclusion here.
Well, I want to ask you to join with me in thanking our city council members, our mayor, and our city manager, and our city staff. The work of government is hard, it's complicated, it's difficult, but the work of government is interactive. And so this grant series and tonight have shown you it's an interactive process. I think our city council members reflected that. I hope you'll continue to be involved. If you would please look at your evaluation forms, give us some feedback. Our presidential ambassadors are going to get in place in this room and below us so you can scan for those FOWLS credits. Ms. Wilkie may still need a few. But we do have to return back to our mayor for an official adjournment.
And I will, and just to finish up, if anybody does ever wish to address city council, please let us know. There's a process for getting on the agenda. We'd love to hear from you. So anyway, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Since you had a few earlier, motion by Mr. Miller, second by Ms. Hutt. I'm going to give it to Ms. Hutt.
No, it's motion by Ms. Edwards, second by Ms. Hutt. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well done, everybody, for coming. Thank you very
Everybody
much.
in favor of adjourn?
Vote.
Thank you very much.
So moved.
So you all
We gotta go.
I'm doing a story for the weekend on
Oh, yeah, we got lots.